Okay, this is the translation for a wedding invitation, which is page 32 of 38 stories. Remember, yellow marks verbs, red, nominative, green, accusative. So in general, you're going red, yellow, green in your translation. Then blue highlights are for Latin 300. So you can ignore that. And giant font is things that I wanted to remind myself to say a little something extra about. Okay, first sentence, salvete odi deaque. Salvete, as you know from our class greeting, just means hello. And O signals that a vocative is coming up. That's the case used to address somebody directly. So hello, O gods and goddesses. Then red, yellow, green. Our friend Peleus has great plans. Then, since nymphon thetidem is green, even though it's at the front, we're skipping it because it's accusative. So it has to wait until after the verb. There's nothing red, so you just understand the red one from the sentence before is still the subject. So our friend Peleus will lead, duquet, that's future, the nymph Thetis in matrimony, or he will marry the nymph Thetis. Sentence 2, vos igitur a me Ioe, you therefore, now I'm going to the yellow, are called, that's that second plural passive ending. So those are the new endings from chapter 18. Notice the you is being acted upon. You therefore are called, and then a me is that ablative of personal agent. By me, Jupiter, to Thessaly. Thessaly is where the wedding is going to take place. It's a location. In the next sentence, expectate is an imperative. So with an imperative, you are not looking for a subject because it's understood to be you, but you don't say it in English or in Latin. So await or expect, bonos ludos, good games, et dulces epulas, and sweet feasts. Next sentence. Autem, so this is what is called a post-positive, which means it comes second, but you translate it first. However, or but, either one's a fine translation. Debatis, the subject of debatis is evident from the tis at the end. It's second person plural. You ought, and then debeo usually takes a complementary infinitive, which is right here with moneri. So you ought to be warned. That's another new passive form. That's the present passive infinitive. So it's like the second principal part, monere, but you switch the final E to an I, and that becomes a passive infinitive, to be verb. So however, you ought to be warned, and then de his periculis, that's a prepositional phrase, about these dangers. Number 1, or unus. Quoniam introduces a dependent clause. That's why it's in brackets. So since Peleus is mortal, and the reason I wanted to point mortalis out to you, that's a nominative, but it's a predicate nominative. So you translate it after the verb in English. So you could say, since mortal Peleus is, but that sounds awful. So with est, if you have a noun and an adjective, both nominative, and the verb to be, try translating the adjective after the verb. So since Peleus is a mortal, and now we get to the main clause, animus eius terebitur, the mind of him, eius is genitive, so the mind of him or his mind will be terrified, there, third person singular present passive, future passive. His mind will be terrified, and then this if clause again is dependent. And the reason I bracketed it was just so you could see which verbs go with which clause. So if we seem, videbemur, remember, and that's a tricky one. When video is passive, it can either mean seem, S-E-E-M, or be seen, S-E-E-N. Usually it's the first. So if we will seem, and the convention in English actually is just to ignore that that's future, which mostly is not okay, but here it is. So either if we will seem too powerful, or if we seem too powerful. When we do conditionals in Latin 300 or 200, we'll learn all those rules, but it's a specific rule about ignoring the future when it's in an if clause. Don't assume you can ignore futures, but with those you'll be able to. If you want to here, it's fine. So if we seem too powerful. And like est up here, videor in the passive is a linking verb, and so it takes a predicate nominative. So potentes here is nominative, modifying the we that's the subject of bimor. So if we seem too powerful. And the second thing to be warned about, number 2 here, who or he who or whoever, that's the subject, go right now to the verb, dares, and audeo, like debeo, you're looking for a complementary infinitive. So whoever dares to come or to arrive sine dono, without a gift, castigabitur, will be punished, or will be, punished is the best word I can think of, will be punished by me. Again, ame with a passive verb and with the preposition a or ob, that's the ablative of personal agent. Okay, next sentence, legate genera donorum. We'll stop there because we've got a bunch of clauses in this next line. Legate, again, is an imperative. So choose or pick out genera donorum. Pick out the kinds of gifts, and then we get a relative clause. Quae laudabuntur, and here quae is nominative. It's the subject of that passive verb. So the kinds of gifts which will be praised by all people, qui ea videbunt, who see or will see them. This thing is sort of like that if clause we talked about earlier. And so here it's okay with me if you ignore that videbunt is technically future. So choose the kinds of gifts which will be praised by all who see or who will see them. Okay, next paragraph. Tu sola, you alone, O dea discordia, O goddess discord, are not called. So vocaris, second person, singular, present passive. You alone, O dea discordia, are not called. So that the subject is tu or you singular is evident from that ending. But remember, when it's expressed, that pronoun, it's just for emphasis. So it's sort of like, you only, O goddess discord, are not called. For by no one are you loved. So for you are loved by no one. Since this nullo is a person, that's an ablative of personal agent, and it takes the preposition a, and it's with a passive verb. So ablatives of personal agent, you have to have 3 things that start with a P. 1, a passive verb. 2, the preposition a or ob. And 3, it's got to be a person or a god or something sort of personified doing the action. So for you are loved by no one. Okay, next sentence. Si venies. Again, venies is future, but because it's following the word if, or si in Latin, you can translate it like a present if you want, or like a future. I don't care at this point. So if you come or if you will come, omnis deus, every god, on Olympus. I use on because Olympus is a mountain, and it sounds weird to say in Olympus. So every god on Olympus will be moved by anger. Now notice, since the anger here, when you say by anger, it's not a person, you don't use a preposition. Up here, where it was a person with the nullo, you do use a preposition. Okay, so if you come, every god on Olympus will be moved by anger. Inter amicos prepositional phrase. Among friends, discord ought not to be tolerated. There's that new present passive infinitive. And the last sentence. Punishment. Ooh, I forgot to make that. That's red. That's a subject. Punishment will be paid by that God. Remember that when is, ea, id has a noun with it, it can mean this or that, whichever one you like better, instead of meaning he or she. So is, ea, id with no noun next to it is he, she, or it. But when it has a noun next to it, as here, it means this or that. So punishment will be paid by this God, or by that God, I think sounds a little better here. Punishment will be paid by that God. And now we have a relative clause, by the God who neglects his own duty. And the reason I know it's his own is because qui and deo are masculine. So punishment will be paid by that God who neglects his own duty. Walete, be well.